Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. It's been 5 years since 16-year-old Matthew Drever was killed, fatally struck by an SUV in the city's East End. And the driver, who police say intentionally ran him over, still hasn't been caught. On this grim anniversary, Toronto police and Drever's family are renewing their appeal for help in solving the case. Ali Chiasson has the story.
I am looking to speak with you as a witness in this event.
That's a direct appeal to the passenger of this SUV, a witness who police say can help them identify the person who chased down 16-year-old Matthew Drever, eventually running him over and killing him in 2019.
I believe that you were not in the vehicle at the time the driver ran over and killed Matthew Drever. I also believe that you did not know that the driver was going to run over Matthew.
Drever was with his 14-year-old friend that night. Not much else is known about the teen's initial encounter with the man in the car.
The interaction was at the rear of that Shoppers Drug Mart. That's at the corner of Woodbine and O'Connor. Unclear exactly what was going on, but they spoke to or were confronted by the persons in the vehicle.
What is clear, Detective Sergeant Brandon Price says,
a person who has a fuse so short that they will do this to a 16-year-old boy is a danger to our community.
After allegedly chasing the boys throughout East York, you can see the dark-colored Hyundai Santa Fe driving onto the sidewalk and, as police allege, deliberately striking the teen and leaving him for dead. As for the passenger, they believe he got out of the SUV before this happened.
He's not in it when the actual offense is taking place. To me, at this point, he is a witness. I need to speak with that individual. Keeping a secret like that is a very heavy burden. And I think if he was concerned about culpability, I don't have any information that you're culpable in this.
5 years on, Drever's mother, Kelly, and his friend, Brooklyn, hope that passenger has had a change of conscience.
I think Matthew would have been going to college by now. I think that he would be living a great life, working his own job, being a strong, independent, Indigenous man.
Matthew was just a 16-year-old boy who had life ahead of him before he was robbed of that. So please, if someone you know have information that could bring us closer finding his murderer, please speak out. Thank you.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Investigators are still unsure what caused a car to lose control and collide with a concrete pillar on the lakeshore yesterday. 4 people were killed in the crash that saw the electric vehicle they were in burst into flames. Greg Ross takes a closer look tonight at the potential dangers of lithium-ion batteries in EVs.
This is video from the crash scene taken by a witness who described the flames from the fire as being around 30 feet high. The vehicle involved was a Tesla that uses lithium-ion batteries. The deputy fire chief on scene said the fire was intense because of the batteries and difficult to contain. George Eny, the director of the Automobile Protection Association, says he's not surprised.
When a fire does start, what we can say is that it burns really hot, so about double the temperature of a normal vehicle, a gas vehicle fire, and it requires exponentially more water to put it out.
He says it could require anywhere from 10 to 100 times the amount of water to douse the flames. At this point, investigators have not determined if the battery cells were actually the cause of the fire, but there are many ways these types of vehicle batteries can combust.
Typically, if it's breached and it goes into what's called thermal runaway, so we're looking at damage to the case, for example, you might hit an object on the road, it loses its coolant, there's an impact. It might just be some fault in the chemistry while the vehicle is parked. But if the vehicle does go into runaway, it's very difficult to put the fire out.
He says even after a fire, there is a risk that these batteries can reignite days and even weeks later, which is why fire crews took extra precautions when transporting the batteries from the lakeshore crash. Eny says while we're still in the early stages when it comes to the field performance of electric car batteries after a fire, he still believes that there has to be a better alternative.
I'm hoping that the industry will develop quickly an alternative that is much more stable and that doesn't catch fire in the same way, and maybe a fire can be put out more easily.
According to police, there's evidence to suggest the car was traveling at a high rate of speed when it lost control. There were 4 people who died in the crash, a 30-year-old woman and 3 men, ages 26, 29, and 32. There was a 5th person in the car, a 25-year-old woman who escaped. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Tragedy in the city's West End this morning. An infant is dead and a woman in hospital after a fire broke out in a home near Trethewey and Eglinton. Chris Glover has more from the scene.
You can see that there's very little damage to the front of the home except for the roof there. Most of the damage is contained to the back side of the house. And we have overnight footage that shows huge billowing smoke at the back side of the house. Fire officials say that up to 6 people were inside this home when the fire started. Most of them made it out unharmed, but fires say that a young woman and a baby had to be rescued from the home. The young woman is in critical condition in hospital, and the baby did not make it.
Our crews immediately removed the infant and the female, transferred to the care of Toronto Paramedic Services, where life-saving measures were immediately initiated, and then they were both transported to the hospital. On behalf of all the women and men of Toronto Fire Service, I want to extend our deepest condolences to all of those that have been impacted by this extremely tragic fire, especially involving a young child. At this point, the fire is under control. Overhaul has been conducted, and we are currently conducting a fire watch.
And the deputy fire chief was saying that at this point they don't know the relationship between the young woman and the baby, but certainly this is a story that's impacting people right around the city and in this neighborhood. Here's what a couple of neighbors had to say.
Flames were really high in the back. Then they came and they started cutting the roof open, and then they had the aerial up for a while, putting water on it. I was hoping the baby would be okay, but I guess not. Because when I came out, they were working on the sidewalk over there on the mother. There's only 2 trucks here when I first came out at 1 o'clock. Then all the other ones started coming.
Well, I was worried about my house. And I thought maybe they're out, I don't know. I thought, too bad they die.
Now that the fire is out, the investigation can begin. Toronto Police, along with Toronto Fire's investigations unit, will be a part of that investigation alongside the Office of the Fire Marshal. They say at this point the investigation is just getting underway, but they do believe that the fire started in the back of the home. Here's more from the Deputy Fire Marshal.
Too hard to speculate right now. Once our investigative team does arrive on scene, they will commence that investigation. But obviously, belief is that it may have originated towards the rear of the structure.
And he was saying they can't say yet if there were or were not working smoke alarms inside the house. That will be a part of the investigation. And he couldn't say exactly how long the investigation would take, only to say that it will be thorough. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The provincial government announced today steps it says will help increase the number of family doctors in Ontario. The plan effectively bars international students from studying medicine here. But as Clara Pasica explains, some don't think the move will make a difference.
I will represent you guys well.
Surrounded by medical students and members of his caucus, the Premier announced a plan he says will ensure more Ontario doctors practice here.
Our government will prioritize med school seats for Ontario students. Starting in the fall of 2026, all Ontario medical schools will be required to allocate at least 95% of all undergraduate seats to residents of Ontario, with the other 5% reserved for students from the rest of Canada.
The health minister says it wasn't right to use significant public funds on those who don't live here.
Whether they are physicians, nurses, lab techs, we're making an investment in Ontario residents, and then when there are other opportunities, Canadian residents. We know through our data that when students train, practice, and learn in the province of Ontario, they stay.
But how many international students are actually studying medicine in Ontario? According to the province's own data, just 10 of the around 4,000 current medical students are international students. 88% of students are Ontarians. The government's critics say this move won't make the difference the Premier says it will.
The university who's most impacted by this decision is U of Ottawa, who gets quite a few French-speaking students from Quebec who comes to Ontario to study medicine, who become physicians in Ontario. The government does absolutely nothing to keep those Ontario-educated French-speaking physicians in Ontario.
The government is also investing $88 million over 3 years to help more Ontario students become family doctors by footing their education bills, doing so by expanding the Learn and Stay program to include medical students who commit to practicing family medicine. But critics say the government is still missing the mark.
This move may well incentivize more people to choose family medicine, but it will do nothing to ensure that they stay in family medicine.
The government's move comes after months of the opposition telling the government that it's not doing enough to ensure all Ontarians have a primary care provider. The opposition will have its chance to tell the government if it thinks it's investing enough in tackling the problem when the fall economic statement comes out next week. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Oshawa.
50 families in Oshawa were welcomed into their new homes built by Habitat for Humanity today.
Affordable housing is a challenge in every community from coast to coast to coast in this country. But today is a day of celebration. We're here today, you look at this amazing space, and this is what happens when, Habitat comes together with the Durham Region Not-for-Profit Housing Corporation.
The new development features 4 blocks of stacked townhouses. Habitat GTA says 26 of these homes were built for Habitat partner families to own. The other 24 are affordable rental homes built for Durham Region Nonprofit Housing Corporation families. The City of Toronto is asking its residents where they want to see public dollars spent. Consultations are now underway for the city's next budget. Tonight, the youth had a chance to have their voices heard. Organized by the Toronto Youth Cabinet, young people gathered at City Hall to outline how they think the money should be used. Dale Manukduk has the story.
There's more than 100 young people aged 13 to 24 here inside council chambers at Toronto City Hall. They're sharing what priorities they think should be addressed in the 2025 budget from a youth perspective.
Free transit for high school students, the creation of a university and college student pass.
This budget consultation was organized by the Toronto Youth Cabinet, who says their work last year helped push Mayor Olivier Chow to invest in youth hubs in priority neighborhoods, delivering the Scarborough Busway, and increasing investments in violence prevention through youth-led organizations. While consultations are in the pre-budget phase, the Toronto Youth Cabinet does have some ideas on what investments they'd like to see next year.
Like youth homelessness, that continues to be on the rise. We need more youth shelter beds, as well as we need to increase the amount of young people moved into transitional and supportive housing, making transit more affordable. It continues to rise on the backs of children and youth, yet they are the ones who can't even get a meaningful and gainful job. Youth employment remains a big focus for us too.
The 2024 budget, Mayor Chow's first in office, was marked by a 9.5% property tax increase, the largest in more than 25 years. It was framed as a way to help dig the city out of a $1.8 billion shortfall that Chow inherited. So what situation does the city find itself in now, and what kind of tax increase could we see this time around? Lucky for us, Budget Chair Councillor Shelley Carroll is here at the youth consultation.
We're closing that gap. 1.8 is now down to 1.2. We also have seen the major bonding house, S&P's, has upgraded our credit rating. So we're going to be able to more affordably borrow. We have no access to people's income, only their property assessment value. And so only by inching up the property tax can we cover inflation, and rising costs of labor, and the supplies we go through in our operating budget, food, fuel, those types of things. And so there is going to be some property tax increase.
If you want to have your say in the budget, you can head online and take the survey, which is offered in several languages. It allows you to select what you would like to see the city invest more into and spend less on. There's also 2 in-person consultations happening on Sunday and Monday, and a virtual consultation happening on Wednesday. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Residents in the city's Don Valley West riding are heading to the polls soon. A by-election is being held early next month to fill a council seat vacated by longtime councillor Jay Robinson after she passed away this spring. It's a hotly contested seat with advanced polling beginning this weekend. Municipal Affairs reporter Sean Jeffords has a look at some of the candidates.
Conservative former journalist Anthony Furey takes a minute to chat with campaign volunteers after a door-knocking blitz in Don Valley West. His team is making a push in the last 2 weeks of this by-election to meet as many voters as possible.
I want to turn the city around. I'm the father of 3 small kids. I care about the community. I grew up near the south end of the ward, and you know, this is a great area, Don Valley West, and we got to have a champion to bring some common sense, practical solutions to City Hall.
Furey made waves in last year's mayoral by-election, surprising pundits by finishing 4th in that race. He says keeping bike lanes off major streets, fighting congestion, and ensuring City Hall is spending wisely are his priorities. Furey's drawn some high-profile attacks, including from former Premier Kathleen Wynne. She's endorsed local TDSB trustee Rachel Chernoslin.
When it comes to the shameless smear attacks on me, Kathleen Wynne, I mean, oh boy, like this, I feel bad for her that she's sort of stooped this low. Dalton McGuinty, this is a guy who he behaves more classy. You don't see him mudslinging in municipal elections.
2 candidates in the race also dropped out this week, throwing their support behind her in an effort to stop Furey from winning. They say they disagree with his politics, and he lives outside of the ward. There are no rules that require a candidate to live in the ward they represent on council. Chernoslin says she's not a member of the Liberal Party, despite earning endorsements from a number of high-profile Liberals.
It's a 2-horse race between me and another candidate. And really, if we were going to make sure that we have a strong local candidate and a strong local voice in place at City Hall for Don Valley West, they needed to support me and make sure that I bring a united vision for all of us.
She says issues like community safety, congestion, and housing affordability come up at the doors.
People want livable communities. They've loved having that in this ward, but they are concerned about the future.
The race has also drawn local community organizer and business owner Leslie Stoyan. She's running her grassroots campaign out of her apartment with a team made up largely of family.
I saw that Ward 15 was potentially going to be controversial, and that big partisan politics were going to come in and make waves in our community. And I am very, very much for the fact that municipal politics needs to be nonpartisan, independent, by community change makers, people who love their city, people like me.
This race fills a seat left vacant by the death of Jay Robinson, the former TTC chair and civil servant. Her 26-year-old son, Sam, says he's running on a platform of investing in city parks to honor her work.
Why I'm running is basically to continue on my mom's work and legacy. I saw the other candidates that are running. I don't believe they will continue her work to the same degree that I'll be able to.
Advanced polling in the ward runs this weekend. The residents of Don Valley West go to the polls on November 4th. Sean Jefford, CBC News, Toronto.
Some exciting news from the Toronto Zoo. Beginning tomorrow, it will allow visitors to see its 2 snow leopard cubs exploring their outdoor habitat.
This is an incredible day for us. We're finally getting to share these young snow leopards with our members specifically. And this weekend, guests are going to get to come by and have their first glimpse.
You can see them, yeah. They blend in with the rocks a little bit, but once they start moving, you can see them. And they're very playful, the little ones, so it's nice to see.
The sisters Zoya and Minu were born in May and are finally making their public debut. Zoo members and media got a preview today. The zoo says it kept the cubs huddled in their indoor habitat until they had received all their necessary vaccines. And here's a look now at your Toronto Zoo on this crisp fall day as we head to break. Stay with us. We will be right back. Colette, I am glad to know there will be more sunshine this weekend than we saw today.
Yeah, today, you're
dreary.
right. Yeah, a little dreary. A little bit gloomy. Yeah. That's okay. We're headed into the weekend, and yes, I think you'll be encouraged, and many folks will be, by the amount of sunshine that comes back into the forecast for the next few days here. Just checking out the upper level winds or the jet stream. Essentially, a lot of things. It's that river of air in the upper atmosphere, but also it tends to divide or be that dividing line between cooler air to the north and the warmer air to the south. And we're kind of right along that dividing line. So, closer to seasonal in general, but there is a bit of a trough here, certainly over northern Ontario, and we had that big ridge that was in place. Well, we'll see some ridging coming back as we get into next week, around midweek next week, and that's going to push some of the warmth back. But it's not bad in the next little while. Daytime highs from today, plenty of double digits, close to seasonal, up to 15. In fact, for Windsor, 10 for the nation's capital, and Toronto coming in at 11 degrees. So yes, we had the cloud cover today, some showers along that cold front. And then behind it, we get into kind of a westerly wind as we go through the day tomorrow, northwest changing to westerly. And with that, that provides that chance of an isolated shower here or there, or a few scattered showers. It's lake effect this time of year. These are still relatively warmer waters of the lakes, and then that cooler air that's passing across it. So there is that chance for the odd sprinkle even into the GTA tomorrow, but I would expect that mostly it's just going to be a mix of sun and cloud, becoming mostly sunny into the later afternoon hours. And I don't think you'll really have to worry about any of that lake effect in southwestern Ontario. Slightly different scenario, though, into eastern Ontario as we get into Saturday night into Sunday. Yeah, you have to travel to get to this, but there'll be some areas there picking up a little bit of a light mix, perhaps coming down. So into Sunday, some sunshine coming back at us, or at least a mix of sun and cloud. Tonight, your temperatures looking like they're on the mild side, certainly above seasonal. 6 degrees the low for Toronto, and tomorrow a high of 12 degrees with that westerly flow. Then Sunday, 13 for the daytime high after a low of 2. Nice looking day. Monday, 14, and then there it is, that ridging coming back as we go into next week. So yes, some showers are the possibility Tuesday, breezy but low 20s Wednesday, and it looks like the mild air will last into Halloween.
All right, good to hear. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night and weekend.